Hello, so this is my ethnic studies research presentation. My name is Jackson Castor. Um, so, oops. So my topic is Latinx contribution and representation, specifically in the game development industry. So why did I choose this topic? I'm an aspiring game developer. Once I graduate college at San Jose State, I want to go into either game development or game engine development. And I kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about kind of the inner workings of the game industry, both the kind of race and ethnicity breakdown, and also kind of why games follow the same motifs and why they are the way they are. And why is this important to the Latinx community specifically? I think it's important to always highlight the accomplishments in an industry like this, and also Latinx adults, and I guess kind of their whole community in general, are massive consumers of video games. So I think if there are such large consumers, I think it's super important that they are represented properly and fairly. So in terms of the contribution portion of my research, I researched an engine called Godot engine. So this is a game engine started by two developers from Argentina back in 2009, and it is basically considered the most popular and biggest contribution to the game and game engine industry from the Latinx community. So this is an open source engine, which means all of the source code is available online. If you or I were to want to look at the source code or propose a change, we could easily do that and then have it, I guess, entered into the code base. And it is extremely popular. Number one, because the language is written in GDScript, is a fork of Python, which is super easy to use for almost anybody. It has a very nice 2D to 3D like development environment transition. It's very, very user friendly. And because the ease of like the language is very simple to use, it's very easy to learn, it's very easy to pick up. And it was originally designed to be a language used for these small these game making competitions in the South American game making community, but it kind of blew up to this worldwide phenomenon. So it's a super amazing contribution to the industry from Latinx developers. And in terms of struggles in the industry, the biggest struggle Latinx people face is underrepresentation. So Latinx people are massive consumers of video games. Like I said, they make up 80%, or I guess 80% of Latinx adults claim they are video game players, while they only make up 8.1% of developers in games, which is a stark underrepresentation and overrepresentation kind of balance when you compare to how white people are make up 62% of white adults consider themselves gamers, while they make up 70% of the industry, which is just it's I feel like that unbalance of representation into talent in both sides is ridiculous. However, some action is being taken. Democratic Senator from Texas, Joaquin Castro, who's right here, formed the Latino Representation in Gaming Coalition, and which essentially works to do a couple things. It wants to reach out to AAA and these really big tech companies and game studios to kind of um, have more opportunities for Latinx representation through games made through them, and have more opportunities open up for young developers, while also providing funding to independent games. One thing they talked about in their inception in 2024 was how they wanted to create a game that highlights the Latina and non-binary experience. So things that have never been done before are trying to be done through this through this committee. So the other issue that Latinx people often face is representation struggles. One article I was reading in my research was someone who was expressing his frustration about how Latinx people in video games were almost always boiled down to kind of negative things like disease, stealing, or just like some roadblock. And with how interactive of a medium video games are, I think like the representation they should be facing or they should have is not what they are currently having. So, in terms of critiques of the author's arguments, I used three sources for this research. The Godot source that I used was written by one of the developers, so it could be being a retrospective could have personal bias. Although honestly, it might be him underselling rather than overselling the achievements of his engine. In terms of the second source, where I mentioned the 80 versus 8.1%, there were various statistics in the article, and I chose the one that was mentioned the most, but I think it varied by 17%. Like, it said, I think it was like 64 to 81% of Latinx adults considered themselves game players. There was kind of a disparity there, so that could be a critique. And finally, in the article specifically discussing representation, no real examples were shown, for how the author was frustrated on how Latinx people were boiled down to negative representations of video games. I'm not saying I disagree with that. I'm just saying I wish there were examples specifically cited for that. And in terms of conclusions and wrapping up why this is so important to the community, number one, Latinx people are massive consumers of video games, so I think it's very important that they have proper representation. I think it's always important to highlight accomplishments that the community has done, especially like the Godot developers have done. They were in 2009 Argentina, which was both politically and economically unstable. So it's always important to highlight feats that are possible when under immense outside pressure. And on a kind of closing point, the experience of playing modern video games is extremely immersive because you have the control over, I guess, what's happening. So it's very important to ensure that your interactions in those games towards groups like Latinx people or other minority groups are positive, because the heightened immersion could lead to, I guess, a vision in your head that may stick more. So it's important. It's very, very important that representation is handled correctly. And that's it. Thank you.